It's where the sharps and sports fans unite. This is Informed Risk Taking, presented by Delphi Sports. Brennan Hall, better known as B Hall, here with you, coming to you live from Columbus, Ohio, for episode number 5 of Informed Risk Taking, again with Delphi Sports. A friendly reminder, on this show, we do not gamble. We simply provide you the insight to take the best informed risks. You can follow everything Delphi Sports on Twitter, at Delphi Sports, and at Delphi Sports IRT for this specific show. We are also on Instagram at Delphi Sports, so head on over to our social media pages on Twitter and Instagram and give us a follow. Give us a couple likes, retweet, share everything that we have in terms of content on those social media pages too. You also can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Delphi Sports. You can also follow us on Spotify, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts, and any other sort of podcasting platform to make sure you search Informed Risk Taking to find everything audio and video from Delphi Sports. This will be, again, where you find everything from video to audio on podcasting platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, you name it. So today we'll be covering topics from the UFC, NBA, and the NHL with these usual suspects, beginning with UFC Vegas 22 breakdown, the high-flying Atlanta Hawks, along with the Brooklyn Nets, who look pretty unstoppable, and then also head over to the NHL for Red Wings and Predators and a North Division showdown between two Canadian teams. So without further ado, let's get started. And it's the man, the myth, the legend, all the way from Warwick, New York, the guy who's been red hot lately. You know him as Liam Picks Fights. We know him as Liam. It's handicapper Liam time. Liam, how we doing?
I'm doing quite well, B Hall. I'm happy to be on the show after a win. I had a tough week last week. I got to come here and own my losses, so it's always better when we're here celebrating the wins, and happy to be doing that after UFC Vegas 22.
I think the funniest thing you said on Twitter about that last weekend was you called the UFC you fickle mistress. Am I correct?
Absolutely, dude. It's not a predictable game in a lot of ways. There's high variance in this sport, so we're never looking to bet on outcomes. We're looking to bet on probabilities, and I felt like we were targeting some good spots this weekend. Despite the fact that MMA is a fickle mistress, we got a good bounce on a couple of these bets, and we can always be thankful for that. You know, she gives and she takes away.
Yeah, so last week your crystal ball wasn't too good to you, but this week it really was, specifically going to the lightweight event too. I want to get into that one real first because I want you just to talk how great. You predicted it word for word of what was going to happen, and it was the last couple seconds. It was a TKO, Grant Dawson over Leonardo Santos. Liam, let's talk about it.
Absolutely. I identified this fight for everybody as the low-key banger alert, what we have to look forward to, and that fight delivered. I hope that you guys watched it, and I hope that you enjoyed. And I thought that it played out, very much how I thought it was going to, and in a couple different ways. I thought that Leo Santos looked great through those first 2 rounds. I thought he was clearly winning the fight despite his age, and I said that he had the skills and abilities to win this fight. But I also acknowledged that, he had about 7.5 to 8 minutes of cardio to get the job done, and when it started to come due there, and he hadn't gotten the finish, and he was sort of coasting his way to the end, I think he got caught sleeping at the end. I think that he probably could have protected himself a bit better, but he thought that the time was going to expire and the round was over and he was safe. And, you're never safe in the octagon until that final bell rings. And Grant Dawson goes out and delivers for me. It was right down to the wire. Sometimes you get the spot that goes for you. Sometimes you get the spot that goes against you. We got the good bounce. And I had money on that fight not to go to decision. I had money on Grant Dawson there in round 3 because I knew that he was going to come on strong if Leo Santos hadn't taken him out yet. And Grant Dawson was able to deliver with seconds to spare. I really appreciated it. It was a hell of a performance from Grant Dawson. I thought he looked great in this fight. And I thought that he did what he needed to do, which was stick around, not get finished, hold on to his skis, not get out over his skis, hold himself in high regard. And I thought that he displayed the confidence and the grit of a championship-level fighter. What a performance by Grant Dawson.
Yeah, it really was great, too. I haven't watched the last couple seconds of the fight, too. I felt bad for Santos, too, just taking how many punches, literally square on the nose while he was on his back, too. So it was kind of hard to watch.
That was a bad finish, B-Hall. Yeah. That was a tough finish to watch because I think the referee might have been a hair too late there when, the guy's mouthpiece is half hanging out. That to me signals it is clearly over. And he got that mouthpiece punched one more time into the ether. Grant Dawson was not there to mess around, man. That was a brutal finish, and glad to see that Leo Santos is okay.
I know another match that you wanted to watch was the co-main event between Gregor Gillespie and Brad Riddell, and that one got canceled because of COVID. So the only other fight then in the card that we talked about previously was the main event was Kevin Holland and Derek Brunson. Brunson was able to get a unanimous decision against Holland. Let's talk about that one.
Absolutely, B-Hall. I was excited about this matchup. I have a personal affinity for Derek Brunson. He wrestled at UNC Pembroke under Jamie Gibbs. I know Jamie Gibbs personally. He's a great wrestling coach and a good man. And I think that Derek Brunson has matured. I think that he has been putting on better and better performances as his career goes on. And I thought that this was a good spot and a good opportunity for Derek Brunson to come through. I was picking the underdog. I feel like the public and a lot of the sharps were on the Kevin Holland side this week, guys. And I was on the Derek Brunson side for value. And I was also on the Derek Brunson side because I thought that his path to victory was going to be a little more consistent and more reliable. And I think that that's just shown through. I talked about the fact that Kevin Holland gives up his back a lot. I talked about the fact that Kevin Holland has been blown over and taken down by guys that are not nearly the wrestler that Derek Brunson is. And that was shown from round 1 to round 5 multiple times and in many iterations. And I just felt like the fight played out, exactly how I thought it would, except that I thought Derek Brunson was going to be able to get the finish, to put his foot on the gas a little bit, but he was never forced to by Kevin Holland, if I'm honest. Kevin Holland sort of coasted his way through this fight, and I'm still a fan of Kevin Holland on the other side, but talking and playing games doesn't win fights, man. The only thing that wins fights is punching, kicking, taking people down, putting them in submission holds. You got to do damage, and you got to be attacking, and I thought that he was complacent for vast majority of this fight. Kevin Holland, knew that he was in a tough fight and a fight that was going to be tough for him to win. And I just think he got overwhelmed and didn't have answers on the night. And that's what I expected. That Derek Brunson by submission at plus 1450. I hope everybody that was scoffing at that prior, after he spends 3 minutes in that head and arm choke, thought that he was going to get the finish there. And I really feel like Derek Brunson, if he hadn't had the kind of fatigue concerns that he was dealing with, this was his first 5-round fight, I think that he probably would have finished that choke. He was in prime position, and he just didn't want to gas himself, in my opinion. But that was an excellent showing from Derek Brunson. I thought he showed that he's the better grappler. I thought he showed he's the better wrestler. And I thought he showed he's the better fighter on the night. And that's despite the fact that he's the older guy. So I'd like to see Kevin Holland move down to 170 pounds. I think he's a better fit there. But I do think that there's a handful of wrestlers, especially towards the top of that division, that will throw him every which way but loose, the same way that Derek Brunson did. And I also think that Derek Brunson moving forward, he deserves this big step up. He's earned these opportunities. He's fought the young, tough guys time in and time out. And I think that he is deserving of one of these big shots and big opportunities. He's been giving a lot of opportunities, and he's been the guy who's giving a hand up to these guys lower down on the card. And now I think it's his time to put his foot down and say, hey, I want a top contender. And it might be an opportunity to fade Derek Brunson, depending on which top contender he ends up getting. But I also think that it's, high since time that we have to stop insta-fading Derek Brunson and talking about his chin every fight. He's eaten hard shots against Ian Heinisch. He's eaten hard shots against Kevin Holland and kept moving forward, did the job how he's supposed to. I was really proud and excited for Derek Brunson.
It almost seemed like Brunson was also pretty overwhelming on the floor against Holland too. But again, it was a good fight between Brunson and Holland. And again, we'll see how those two guys come at each other, or in the future potentially, or just any future matchups going forward too. So next point obviously is UFC 260. It's going to be this upcoming weekend. I know you're excited. I'm excited because a guy that I like to watch, and he's a Cleveland guy, is Stipe Miocic. He's going to be the heavyweight matchup going up against Francis Ngannou. So I know there's 10 fights, but that one's going to be the highlight for sure. I know we want to briefly touch on it here.
Absolutely, B-Hall. And to quickly put a bow on what you had mentioned before, the co-main event from last week gets postponed because Brad Riddell, who was in that fight against Gregor Gillespie, that lightweight co-main event that ended up getting canceled. Brad Riddell is the coach of Alexander Volkanovski, who was supposed to fight here in the co-main event. The featherweight championship was supposed to be on the line against Brian Ortega, another big fight that everybody's looking forward to. And so we, unfortunately, now are going to have to wait for that fight. I would be anticipating that they will reschedule the fight in addition to the Brad Riddell fight on the same card. That would be my guess is how they're going to handle that moving forward. But it's affected a couple matchups. I believe Shane Young got pulled from his fight with Omar Morales. He's a teammate of both Volkanovski and Riddell. And so I do think that, it's a dent on the card. We wanted to see that featherweight title fight. But like you said, B-Hall, we got a lot to look forward to. We got an excellent heavyweight main event. And sometimes, guys, I rag on the heavyweight division. I think at the lower levels, outside the top 15, you're not getting the same kind of quality at the heavyweight division that you do at the lightweight division. But I will also acknowledge that there is no feeling like the night of a heavyweight title fight when one punch can change everything. Everything's on the line. You got a rematch here, one with high stakes. Francis Ngannou's been the death touch for almost everybody in the heavyweight division, putting people out in under a minute in a bunch of his recent contests. He's a scary man. He's a dangerous first-round finisher. And I think that Stipe Miocic may just be his kryptonite. We've seen it in the past that he was able to get to his takedowns. He was able to work his game. He was able to clinch him against the cage. And for large portions of that fight, guys, he was able to outbox it plain and simple in the middle of the cage because of his skills and abilities, and because he was able to get Francis tired and make him carry a lot of weight with that half Nelson against the cage for the early rounds. And I was rewatching the fight today, guys. I think that this is going to be an exciting fight. There's a lot to look forward to. We can expect and reasonably anticipate that Francis Ngannou, who is the younger man here, is going to have gotten better since the first contest. We can also anticipate that Stipe Miocic has the tools and abilities to win this fight because we've seen it, and it was thorough the first time. So hopefully the Cleveland man, the pride of Northeast Ohio, Stipe Miocic, can come through again. I'm a big fan of Stipe as well. I used to train at Strong Style MMA. So I got a lot of love for Stipe in my heart, but I do got to say this is a tough challenge. There's a reason that money comes in on Francis Ngannou every time this guy fights. He's a scary man. I think that Francis Ngannou early is still a very scary proposition for every heavyweight in the world. But Stipe Miocic, if there's one man who can stand up to Francis Ngannou these days, it's the champ. It's the baddest man on the planet, Stipe Miocic. I'm looking forward to this fight.
Yeah, I am as well too. So hopefully Stipe at least is my pick for the favorite going forward too. I know I don't really do too much betting on this show, but if I did, I'd put my money on him.
He's a plus 100 underdog, B-Hall. Right now, you can get the champ at even money if you want to take that wager. I wouldn't blame you.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens too. Liam, we appreciate it as always. You can follow him on Twitter at Liam Picks Fights. He is our MMA handicapper. Liam, thanks as always. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks so much, B-Hall.
And now we head to the hardwood to talk everything National Basketball Association with our guy, the Commish. You can follow him on Twitter at Delphi Commish. Commish, what's up?
B-Hall, great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you again, too. So let's jump right into it. Speaking of the National Basketball Association, I know we had a couple games we were going to watch last couple days. I know we got a couple more to get to as well. So one that I want to briefly touch on is one that you had tabbed, specifically the Indiana Pacers against the Miami Heat. And I tell you what, the Pacers just blew by the Heat.
Yeah, we told you on the last show to stay away from the spread in that game. Miami came into this 2-game set with the Pacers red hot. The Pacers came in, they were just getting Karis LeVert back, but we did say they probably are going to look a lot more like that 8-4 team that started the season than the 8-16 team that went into that spiral after the Oladipo trade. I don't think anybody expected them to go into Miami and win 137-110 in that first game, but then that second game, they held firm. They won in overtime 109-106. We talked about they've had some bad luck closing out games. They've also just had some poor performances down the stretch in the fourth quarter. We thought LeVert was going to help remedy some of that, and so far that's borne itself out. So Indiana Pacers, we liked them to get into the postseason. They were about minus 175, minus 185 last week, and that line has moved significantly. It's about minus 250 right now, so hopefully you jumped on that last week.
And especially in the Eastern Conference where everything is just so tight, they go on a little run here. They could be sitting pretty heading into playoffs too. So you definitely want to get those in. So next and more importantly, we have a couple early week games, the slate we want to get to, Commish. So first and foremost, want to jump right into the red hot Atlanta Hawks that we talked about before. They're right now sitting at 22-20. They're probably about the 4 or 5 seed right now in the Eastern Conference Finals. Their last 10, they've been 8-2. They're going to go up against an LA Clippers team that's been about 500 the last 10 games. They're 4-6. They're also number 4 seed right now in the Western Conference. They are an overall 27-16 and a little bit more competitive Western Conference. Where's the value right now between the Hawks and the Clippers that you can tell me?
So the value in this game is definitely on the under. The line opened at under 226 and it opened at 226 and a half. I'm going to probably put a 4-star on the under in that game. Since McMillan took over, the Hawks are 8-0, and we'll get to that in a minute. The important part about him taking over is the Hawks are playing at the 29th fastest pace in basketball right now, so second slowest if you want to think about it that way. The Clippers have played at a pretty slow pace all season, bottom of third in the NBA. 226.5. I know the Clippers shoot the ball lights out from beyond the arc, but again, we've talked about it on the show in the past. For whatever reason, they only shoot about the 17th, 18th most three-pointers in the league. So I don't think they're going to be able to exploit that tremendously. Since McMillan took over, the Atlanta Hawks are actually number 2 in the NBA right now in defensive rating over their last 8 games. Again, all 8 wins. And to your point about the Eastern Conference standings, they were at the bottom, not at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, but they were not in a good spot a week ago or a couple weeks ago. 8-0. Now they're, if the playoffs started right now, they're the number 4 seed. They would be hosting the first round of the playoffs. But I think that's going to regress, and I think that's going to start on Monday. I'd probably also put a lean on the Clippers minus 6.5 in that game, and I'll tell you why. Atlanta's 8 wins since McMillan came in. I think it's easy to look at this and say, oh man, Atlanta was really underperforming. They brought in a new coach, interim coach, and now they've taken off. But I'll read you through these games. Their winning streak started with a win at Miami, but they didn't have Jimmy Butler. Then they made quick work of Orlando, Toronto, Sacramento, Cleveland, Houston, and OKC. Some of the worst teams in the NBA, unquestionably. And then on Saturday, they took care of the Lakers, but LeBron, as we all know, left the game with that ankle injury at halftime, and then they were able to hold on by 5 points. So I don't think this team is as good as their 8-0 record would suggest. I think they have the number 2 net rating in the NBA over that span. But again, their offense and their defensive numbers, I think, are a little bit inflated, and I would expect them to regress back a little bit here, especially looking at their road trip coming up. They're at Clippers, at Sacramento, at Golden State, Denver, Phoenix, San Antonio, and New Orleans. If you want to just fade them in all of those games, I think they would cover the spread less than then the other teams would cover against them over these next few games.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be a different stretch too. However, I do personally like Nate McMillan as a coach. I liked him in Indiana, and I didn't really think it was justified how he got let go in Indiana, but I'm glad he's got another opportunity down in Atlanta, and we'll see what happens too. But got another game to move on to in the early slate of games too. The other team that you're kind of looking at, this is going to be kind of midweek in this upcoming week. It's going to be the Brooklyn Nets and the Portland Trail Blazers. This is kind of a heavyweight matchup right now. Both the Trail Blazers and the Nets are looking really, really good, specifically the Nets too, holding down that number 2 spot. Now, I think they're going to either hold on that number 2 spot the rest of the way or potentially become the number 1 seed too, but we'll see what happens. And then you also have the Trail Blazers, my guy, Damian Lillard. I love whenever he does the "It's Dame Time" on his wrist, like he's wearing a watch. It's fantastic. He's always a stud. I know, they've had a couple issues in terms of injuries. I know CJ McCollum hasn't been really much in the lineup. He's been hurt for a while. So let's get into it. Where's the value between this heavyweight matchup between the Nets and the Blazers?
So this game's taking place on Tuesday, so we don't have the line just yet for this. Brooklyn, as you mentioned, has just been unstoppable. I mean, their last 17 games, they've only had a handful of losses, and one of those losses came without both Irving and Durant. It was just Harden out there on an island by himself against Dallas. So I give him a pass in that game. They look pretty unbeatable, quite honestly. Even when they fall behind early in games, they're able to come back and finish the job. Their defense looks really strong. I was admittedly one of those critics after they traded Jared Allen out of there. That's like, who's going to get the rebounds? Who's going to stop people in the paint? DeAndre Jordan has come back to life a little bit. Claxton's looked decent in the paint as well. James Harden, quite honestly, looks like the best player in basketball. As much as that pains me to say, because I'm not a huge James Harden fan, he's looked that good. Kyrie Irving looks locked in. When this team gets Kevin Durant back, I'm with you, B-Hall. It's really hard to imagine them not at least making it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and I think that's going to come with either a number 1 or number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. It might come down to who's healthier. If Philly's going to have Simmons and Embiid in the lineup come playoff time, or if Brooklyn's going to be at full strength with their big 3. But we'll see. Specifically with this game with Portland, there might be some value on Portland. And again, follow at Delphi Commish. We'll be sending out a play on this game on the Twitter handle. But Portland, man, they just got CJ McCollum back. Like you said, he's been out of the lineup for a while, but he just had 32 and a 125-119 win against Dallas on Friday night. This team is not much different than the team that went to the Western Conference Finals in 2019. I know they got swept by the Warriors in that series, but they actually had big leads in a couple of those games and faltered down the stretch. I'm not saying that they deserve to go to the finals or anything, but my point being, the only real significant player that they lost on that team was Seth Curry, who's over in Philly now. It's pretty much the same roster. They don't have Jusuf Nurkic in the lineup right now. He's one of those guys that's still dealing with injury. But man, Damian Lillard, if there's a guy who's maybe a dark horse for MVP right now with LeBron and Embiid out of there and due to injury, it might be him. Portland, Right now they're the number 5 seed, but I could definitely see them maybe crawling up a couple of games if they're able to get up to maybe the 2 or 3 seed by the end of the regular season. Damian Lillard might be in those MVP conversations, especially if he keeps playing the way he is. I like Portland a lot. And again, if LeBron's out, we don't know what Anthony Davis's future looks like for the rest of this season. Portland's got some sneaky value, maybe long term as well at the sports books.
I'm going to have to ask you, what school did Damian Lillard go to? The NCAA tournament has started to make me think about who all these guys came from in terms of school or where they went to play professionally previously or whatever it might be too. So I'll leave you with that. Find out what school that Damian Lillard went to and get back to me next show, and then I'll give you a pop quiz. And if you're not, then I'll kick you out of this lobby. If you do, you'll be lucky.
Sounds good, B-Hall. I should be up to date on where all these guys went to college, being that it's March Madness. I should have known that you were going to bring this up on the show, being a huge college basketball fan.
Huge college basketball fan. Well, my brackets, I've filled out 5 of them, and 5 of them, at least one league, and then a couple other ones are just totally busted. So, you know what? I've kind of given up. I'm just hoping for chaos at this point. But anyway, that's your homework for tonight, and then we'll do it again next show too. Commish, appreciate the time as always. You can follow him at Delphi Commish on Twitter. Commish, we appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you soon.
Always good talking to B-Hall. Thanks for the time.
Don't forget your homework. And last but not certainly most least, is we're going to talk to our NHL handicapper, Justyn Spansky, coming to you live from Cleveland at Justyn_Pansky. We can find him on Twitter. Justyn, I'm not happy the fact you're wearing that maize and blech on your shirt. I know they're the only team left in the Big Ten, at least that seems like it, in the NCAA tournament right now too. So I think that's probably why you're wearing it. But regardless, well, let's talk some NHL. How we doing?
Not too bad, B-Hall. Been pretty red hot on the ice, and see you're a little hot on the face there. Got some vitamin D over this weekend. I see.
Here we go. We did. Listen, 63 degrees. I got out in the links, shot a round of 18, and I shot a good 53 that I was going to tell you about, since you are going to be covering a little bit of the PGA too. And I know the Honda Classic was going on this weekend too, so I did my own rendition of the back 9 of shooting a 53, and I'll potentially be doing a pro-am here relatively soon, just because. But
not
anyway,
yeah. Also wearing this though, might I add, we have the NCAA hockey tournament, the regional starting up next weekend. Michigan's going to be the number 2 seed. They got a tough draw there out of the region that they're in, but they're also in the NCAA hockey tournament. So got some double action for my Wolverines here.
Yeah, you definitely do too. So, like you said, you've been red hot in the NHL. You've been 4-0 in your last 4 picks. And again, if you want to follow everything on Twitter for Justyn, it's Justyn_Spansky. But Justyn, let's get back and do a couple games that we had over the weekend too. We're kind of big blowouts, specifically going to the Colorado Avalanche over the Minnesota Wild. That was a 6-0 shutout. And then the other game too that we had eyes on were the New York Islanders and Philadelphia Flyers. And the Islanders were able to have their stronghold still in that number 2 spot in the East Division with a 6-1 win.
Yeah, like I said, the Islanders, I did think they were going to come out with a little bit of bite in their game, especially after having that 9-game win streak snapped. And yeah, not much more you can ask for after 4 goals in the first period there. They just kind of put in cruise control there and cruise. But the Colorado game, I was sweating that one a little bit. We did have the over in that one. Went over by the half. Wish Minnesota could have gotten a goal there to make my life a little bit easier. But yeah, I can't really complain with the results that have been coming out on the ice here. So we're going to keep it going this week.
I also need to get a counter how many times you use the Bugs Bunny gift too. So I need to start paying a little bit more.
We're counting the dough. We're counting the dough.
Counting the dough. So, and then a couple other games you want to look forward to this week, kind of in the midweek and late week too. Specifically in the Central Division, you're going to see a bottom feeder game between the Nashville Predators and the Detroit Red Wings. What made you want to tab this game? Because like I said, both teams not having too great of seasons, but where's the value and why did you choose this game to look at?
Yeah, well, for the Red Wings, I mean, they can't get much worse than they were last year. Just absolutely horrible. At the very bottom of the league by themselves, by a significant margin of over 20 points. Just absolutely terrible. But they've shown improvements this year. And being a Red Wings fan, it's nice to see. We're not quite there yet. Obviously, with the rebuild coming in, Steve Yzerman taking over as GM, we knew it was going to be some time until the young talent got there. But team who's an absolute dumpster fire this year, the Nashville Predators. This team, you flash back, I believe it was 4 years ago, in the Stanley Cup final, all this great young talent, goaltending with Pecorine solid, and it is just completely fallen off the map for them. They're it's just a total dumpster fire for them. And there will be change coming, I believe, there at the end of the season, as many have predicted. And some guys will be leaving at the trade deadline as well, as GM there will be shopping them. But the play I want to target on this is the under. Nashville's had a real hard time struggling to score lately. And also Detroit has had some low scoring games. They have been playing better, like I did mention about Detroit. So I do think goals are going to be hard to come by here. And I really want to hammer that under there. It is going to be at 5.5. So that's the lowest total that we are going to see there out of that game. But I still like the under. It's going to be hard for Detroit to score. And like I mentioned, Nashville especially.
So in that bottom feeding game, again, it's going to be the Nashville Predators and the Detroit Red Wings too. So we'll see who comes out earlier or later on this week too. And then last but not least, it's going to be hockey night in Canada between two North Division teams, the Montreal Canadiens and the Edmonton Oilers, as I almost literally just forgot what team they were playing. So again, Oilers, Canadiens, going to be a good matchup in Canada. It always is. And, as of late, the Canadiens have looked okay. They've lost a lot of games in overtime lately. So, at least they're getting a point here and there, but obviously they want to get 2 compared to 1. And the Oilers are looking really, really good. What can you tell me about this game?
Yeah, well, Montreal, they did have the firing of Claude Julien back in February. He was the first coach this year to get axed, and there's been a couple more, who have followed suit there. But bringing in Dominic Ducharnay, a lot of people really were kind of surprised by this, assistant coach. Very proven, though, had some success with the Canadian World Junior teams, led them to a couple of gold medals. But they've improved here, and I like their game, but I don't like it as much as Edmonton here. Edmonton has been flying up the standings in that North Division, catching Toronto, tied for first place in the North Division. Everybody thought Toronto was going to run away with it. Yeah, Connor McDavid, hold my drink there, please. 60 points, top in the league, now tied with Austin Matthews for the league in scoring with 21 goals. Leon Draisaitl, 50 points, second in the league. And another guy I really want to target for them, Tyson Barrie. Had a disappointing season last year with the Leafs, but he has come over and been a perfect match on that blue line. Really stepped up big on the power play. Goaltending has been a slight issue for them. I would like to see that cleaned up here, but I'm going to ride the red-hot Oilers into this one in Montreal, and I think they're going to squeak out a nice win here.
Yeah, it should be a good matchup in that North Division too. As always, he's Justyn Spansky. You can follow him on Twitter at Justyn_Spansky. He comes out of Cleveland. And also get your counters out for how many times he wants to count the dough and Bugs Bunny counting money gift moving forward too. Justyn, appreciate the time as always, my friend, and we will talk to you again soon.
Appreciate it, B. Hall. I am going to go work on my golf game here a little bit, get it in nice shape for the season here.
Yeah, I'm going to go get some SPF 100 probably. So next
a little sunscreen too.
Little bit. So thanks, Justyn.
No problem.
So that'll wrap up everything from us from Delphi Sports. Again, this is Informed Risk Taking. Thank you for tuning in, whether you're at home or on the go. I'm B. Hall, better known as Brennan Hall, or flip that actually. Brennan Hall, better known as B. Hall for you. Again, this has been Informed Risk Taking, episode number 5. We thank you for tuning in. You can follow everything for Delphi Sports on Twitter, Instagram, and everything else, and most likely on YouTube and all the other podcasting platforms as well. So first and foremost, go give us a follow at Delphi Sports IRT and at Delphi Sports on Twitter. Also, we are on Instagram at Delphi Sports. We have all of our content on social on those 2 applications. We also do have everything in terms of video content on YouTube. You can follow for everything and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Delphi Sports. Also, head over to podcasting platforms from Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Search for Informed Risk Taking. Again, Liam Picks Fights is going to be upcoming on Friday at 6 o'clock. He also is going to have a couple other content previously before Friday, so be on the lookout for that. Follow him on Twitter at Liam Picks Fights. So for everybody here at Delphi Sports, for the Commish, for Justyn, and for Liam, I'm B. Hall saying so long until next time. Thanks again for tuning in, folks, and make sure to take the best informed risk.